Before we have our circle test, I wanted to do a couple more things that you need to get covered before we do that. So tomorrow you'll have the review. Wednesday you'll get the answers, and Thursday you'll each get a different test from me. And then you can just submit it by 9 o'clock the next morning. The teachers got together and decided that all your work will be due 9 o'clock the day after it's assigned. So you don't have to worry about everybody sending different times. If you have a project, it'll be due 9 o'clock on the day of the project. So that'll make it easier for you guys to manage your time and your work. So the first question here says that the center is at -1, -1, and the point on the circle is -19, -1. So what this looks like when you draw it is it's going to give you the center and then a point somewhere over here on the circle. So in order to find the radius, I need to find the distance between these two. And they already gave you the center. So they already gave you the center of the circle, so you already have h and k. H is -1, k is -1. And now we just have to find the distance between those 2 points to find the radius of the circle. So we do distance equals the square root of x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. And if we put here that -1, -1 is x1, y1, and -19, -1 is x2, y2. And then we just plug them in. D equals the square root of -1 minus -19 squared plus -1 minus -1 squared. And we put that in the calculator. I always tell you to put the guts in the calculator first and just leave it under the hood because you'll see what happens in a minute. So the answer to that would be the distance equals the distance is equal to the square root of 324. We'll leave that alone because the radius is going to be the square root of 324. But when I put it in the formula, remember I changed the signs. Some of you aren't changing the signs. Y plus 1 squared. I do radius squared. Well, what is that squared? It's a plain 324. So we go back here and the center. So H, K, and R is 2, 12, and the radius was 3. And then we just write that equation. Let me write it down here. So it would be x minus 2 plus y minus 12 squared equals 9. And that is your answer to number 2. If you go to page 2, it explains how I got the radius on page 2. So go ahead and go to page 2 and see how I got this r equals 3. I drew it on a graph on page 2 of this presentation. So the next one, number 2, it says center is 212 and tangent to x equals 5. The easiest way to do these is to graph them. The equation of x equals 5 is a vertical line at 5. So there's your 5. It's a vertical line at 5. What tangent means is that that circle just touches that at one point there. That means that this distance between the center and that line is the radius. So the radius is 3. So if we have that the center is 212, then that means H is 2, K is 12, and the radius is 3. So I'm going to go back to the other page and write that information down, and then I'll write my equation. These are not hard. If it's y equals, it's a horizontal line at that number. If it's x equals, it's a vertical line at that number. So you just count the number of blocks between the center and that line, and that gives you the radius. So the radius is 3 here. So when they give you the ends of the diameter, what they're giving you is, here's the center, they're giving you these 2 points here. So if I find the midpoint, I've got the center, and if I find the distance between either one of those and the center, I have the radius. So to find midpoint, it's average of the x's, average of the y's, so that's negative 14 plus 8 divided by 2, and that is negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3. That's your h. Let's put it down here. And your k is negative 7 plus negative 9 divided by 2, which is negative 16 divided by 2, which is negative 8. So k is negative 8. And now to find the distance between the center, which is negative 3, negative 8, and either one of those points, doesn't matter which one we pick, they're both kind of ugly, but pick the prettiest one if there is one, and that's going to be x1, y1, x2, y2. We put it in the distance formula, and we have negative 3 minus 8 squared plus negative 8 minus negative 9 squared, and that should give you the square root. Remember, don't put the hood in the calculator. Square root of 122. So if the distance is square root of 122, that's your radius. And then you just put it in the equation. X plus 3 squared plus y plus 8 squared equals 122. The last one is pretty easy because we can just count blocks. If you draw a line between here and here, let me do that better. The center is going to be right there. So the center is going to be 2, 0. So h is 2, k is 0. And then the radius is going to be from 5 to 2, so 3. So the radius is going to be 3. You just count the blocks here. And then you just put that in your equation. X minus 2 squared plus y squared equals 9. Please let me know if you have questions on any of these. Number 2 probably is the most challenging. You guys have done distance before. Remember to just leave it under the hood, because when you square it, it's going to come out of the hood and you don't have to worry about decimals. When you put decimals, it's going to mess it up. Just give me a call and I'll give you some screen time if you need some help with any of these. Talk to you later. Remember, tomorrow we're meeting on Zoom during our normal class time. Bye. Hope you have a good day.